Welcome into Sports Memos Betting Podcast. College football, every game on the board with Mid-Major Matt, our first guest up. Mid-Major Matt, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Doing well. I always appreciate the fine comments we get on these videos. Appreciate the people. I like to give out the information. I may not give a pick on every play, but I at least provide you with some information if you want to make a pick on that play.
And he will give some picks out in the next, about 20 games on the first segment, starting off on Thursday night here. Halloween night, Mid-Major Matt. Georgia Southern versus Appalachian State. Minus 15.5. We got App State laying at home in Boone, North Carolina. Total of 45. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I always love these Halloween night games because I'm sure the kids love playing on Halloween. They all get dressed up. They probably get nice and happy, drink a lot as they get ready. You look at this matchup, Appalachian State is steamrolling everybody right now. I mean, they're just playing some of the best football. They are. I actually think if we discuss the group of 5 schools, like there's SMU and Memphis, but like I actually consider Appalachian State may be better than those schools, and I think a lot of it's because they don't get the publicity of everybody else. Even the AAC, look, they're going to have a Saturday night game on the channel. They're going to have College Game Day. App State never gets this stuff, but they've got a really good offense. They've got a defense that plays pretty well. The challenge here will be a short week against the triple option squad. We've talked about Georgia Southern before. They run the triple option, but it's not the best triple option that they can do. Last week they won 41-7 against New Mexico State. It was homecoming for them. Not much of a challenge. They got a lot of kinks out there. The question is, can they carry that over on the short week against a very stout Appalachian State team? With a short amount of time to prepare, maybe the triple option team would be worth a look here if they ran it a little bit better than they currently do.
And Mid-Major Matt, next game up, we got a doubleheader on Thursday night, actually going at the same time here. 3:05, 3:06 Thursday nighter, West Virginia at Baylor in the Big 12, 56.5 being the total, minus 17 in the hook. That's the Baylor Bears laying in Waco.
Yeah, I'd like to, it's hard to believe this far into the season, but I'd like to see more from Baylor. Their schedule hasn't been that tough. You look at some of the games that they've won, and they can only play who's on their schedule. Obviously, I have the same complaint with Minnesota because Minnesota really hasn't played anybody. But you know what? All you have to do is just keep winning. They have not Georgia yet. They didn't lose to a South Carolina team. They didn't lose to Kansas State like Oklahoma did. Baylor's got a very impressive offense, 14th overall. Their defense has allowed just 19.1 points per game. West Virginia's really banged up. No Josh Chandler. It looks like Quandarius Qualls, 2 of their linebackers, doubtful for this one. They are probably going to get Keith Washington back in the secondary, but I don't know if that's enough. West Virginia's offense has been very inconsistent lately. They're a little banged up in this one. Maybe we see a somewhat of a modified shootout, but it is on a Thursday, so this game probably won't be on my card. I'll be focusing in on. I'll have one eye on the Georgia Southern Appalachian State game while I'm participating in my Halloween festivities on Thursday night.
Mid-Major Matt, let's move to the Friday night slate here. Friday night lights action in AAC. We got Navy at UConn, 54.5 being the total, minus 27.5. That's the midshipmen laying on the highway.
It's funny. When we looked at this season, we thought, because there was a drastic difference in totals for Army and Navy, we thought this was going to be a long year for Navy. They didn't have a ton of guys back. The triple option might have taken a hit. And we thought Army was going to be this great team with the way that they play. Well, it's kind of been flipped so far. Navy has been very good this year. They've won 4 straight. A lot of those were at home. They beat Air Force, USF, and Tulane at home. They won at Tulsa, blowing them out rather easily. Look, this is a UConn team that's terrible. They have been a home underdog of 14.5 points or more 8 times the last 3 seasons. Think about it. They've been at least a 2-touchdown underdog at home 8 times the last 3 seasons. They've only covered the 4 of those. These two haven't played the last couple of years, but it's actually been really close. If you look back in 2016, Navy won 28-24 against UConn. That's when Navy was 9-5. In 2015, they won 28-18 in 2015, and that was when Navy was a 11-2 team. I don't like laying this many points on the road, but clearly you can't take UConn right now. This team is absolutely horrific. I don't know, maybe the under if you hope that Navy goes on some of these long drives that they can do as a triple option team.
Mid-Major Matt, let's move to the Saturday slate here. In the ACC, we got NC State at Wake Forest. Demon Deacons laying 7 or 7.5, depending where you're shopping. 59.5 being the total.
So NC State has missed 12. They're coming off a bye week against Boston College. They missed 12 players. This includes both their offensive tackles, who they were depending upon. This also expects 5 other starters that are not going to play the rest of the year. They're going to the Leary kid at quarterback, the redshirt freshman. None of these guys have been very good. Bailey Hockman hasn't been very good. Matthew McKay hasn't been very good. But everybody kind of wants to see Devin Leary out there, and so they'll get a chance. I mean, Wake Forest has given up a boatload of points this season. They lose Justin Sternad to a biceps injury last time out, and he's arguably their best player. I didn't talk to him preseason at the ACC kickoff event, and he's such a great kid. And he was talking about this defense and how excited he was for this season. But he's kind of the heart and soul of that defense that gave up 62 points to Louisville just a couple weeks ago. The other question is, and this is why you can't bet it right now, it looks like Jamie Newman's going to start for Wake Forest, but maybe it's the Hartman kid. This is why we're doing this on Tuesday, so there's a lot more questions when it comes to the quarterback. If Newman plays, I like Wake Forest, maybe a little bit more. But if Hartman's playing, I maybe want to take a chance with NC State. I don't know. This could be an under. There's a lot of different directions that we can go, considering, but we don't know who the quarterback's going to be for the home team yet.
And he's Mid-Major Matt, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, coming to us from Richmond, Virginia, right, Matt? They're at the ESPN radio studios?
Yes, this is our lovely ESPN studios. I did not buy all these things just to put it up on my white wall at home. And you could see behind me, there's all this stuff here, the ESPN. We got neon sign money there, Drew. That's how nice we're rolling here in Richmond. All
right, good stuff. So, yeah, you can listen to them there on ESPN Radio. And, guys, on podcast, Matt was referring to, we are simulcast on YouTube right now on the channel. So if you want to put a face with the name going forward, you can also listen to the podcast, The Sports Memo, both every game on the board in college and NFL, and the opening line report with Teddy covers on Monday. You can watch it on YouTube, the Apple iTunes podcast, and also on sportsmemo.com. We got Liberty at UMass up next. 3:11-3:12 is the rotation number, 12 noon Eastern kick here. And the Liberty Flames land 23 or 23.5. Don't hear that every day, Matt. Also 70 being the total.
So last year, this game was a 62-59 affair. UMass won the game. They threw for 540 yards. To put that into perspective, they have thrown for less than that over their last 3 games combined. I mean, this is a bad UMass team. They got blown out. I'm glad I did not take them last week. I was thinking about it. The 10 looked a little juicy against UConn. I didn't take it. They lost 56-35 to UConn. This team has just absolutely been abysmal. I watched the FIU game and the Louisiana Tech game. They don't have good quarterback play. Randall West is okay at quarterback, but they've got this Curtis kid who's not very good. They don't play good defense. They have no home field advantage. The thing is with Liberty, look, we all talked about it, and I think one of our games last week was the Liberty-Rutgers game here, and we all said, it's really weird to see Liberty be favored by this much against a Big Ten school. Perhaps we should have noticed that because a Big Ten school is going to push Liberty around, and that's certainly what happened. Now, this is game 2 of a 4-game road trip. Liberty plays at Rutgers, at UMass, at BYU, bye week, at Virginia. So basically, their whole month of November is going to be spent outside of Liberty. They have a very good offense. This team should be able to score. Buckshot Calvert, Antonio Gandy Golden, a great quarterback wide receiver comparison here. Just their 3rd road game of the season. It's a lot of points here. Maybe you take a look at the over, but that's a lot of points to lay, even though Liberty is that much better than UMass.
Matt, we got Conference USA action here. Old Dominion at FIU down there in Miami. We got the Panthers, which we were just talking about, laying 17-49 the total, Matt.
Yeah, this ODU won their first game against Norfolk State. We had Norfolk State that first game. They didn't cover. Norfolk State was a 3-point loser, 24-21. Since then, ODU has scored 92 points over this losing streak. They've tried Messiah DeWeaver at quarterback. They've tried Stone Smart at quarterback. They might have considered going back to Stephen Williams if he hadn't been their wide receiver right now. There's just not a lot of offense right now from this ODU team. They have a pretty good defense. It's relatively healthy. There's some decent injuries there, but they're on the field way too much. This is one of those classic cases we've seen with teams in the past, like Kent State and some of these other schools. They've got good defenses, but if the offense keeps going 3 and out and putting them in bad positions, then they start to let up as the game goes along. Eric Kuma, the Hokie transfer, played in the last game, then announced he's going to redshirt. So there's a key weapon on offense that ODU is not going to have. FIU coming off a loss to Middle Tennessee, 50-17. They gave up 471 rushing yards. They had 4 fumbles. It was an embarrassing game. I look for FIU to come out hot. I tried FIU in the first half. I think it was 2 weeks ago against Rice. They did not cover the first half against Rice because they settled for a lot of field goals. Maybe they do a little bit better here against ODU. Maybe you take a look at the under, thinking the Monarchs are not going to contribute too many points to the under.
We got Sunbelt action here up next, Matt. Troy at Coastal Carolina, 60 being the total. Trojans, pick 'em or -1 on the road. I think the Chanticleers are up against it. How are you feeling?
Well, so here's the thing with Troy. This is a team that's lost 2 games in the conference already. And so now they're already looking at, they've lost 2 games in conference, Arkansas State, and then they're coming off the 52-33 loss to Georgia State. So they don't control their own destiny right now. The coach after the game on Saturday basically said, I need to see what these guys are going to be like in practice. This is a Troy team that's very used to being a front-runner squad in this conference. They're not used to having to get help in order to win their side of the division. They've got all the talent in the world. Granted, they lost B.J. Smith a couple weeks ago and still haven't tried to figure out, the running game there. Coastal Carolina, the issues are many. Fred Payton, even after a bye week, still dealing with an injury. That's their quarterback. Senior corner Chandler Christ also got hurt. This is a really banged-up team that didn't have too many offensive linemen available. They're struggling to practice at times. So these 2 teams are not exactly bet-on teams right now. So I kind of want to see where the line move goes. Troy should win this game rather easily, but if they're not focused, if they're still up in the air about the fact that they need help to win the division, then they may get bit in Coastal.
Matt, next game up, we got a situation where we're either betting on Georgia Tech or we're laying points with Pitt in that offense that hasn't been very good. This one is in Atlanta, and I'm talking Pittsburgh at Georgia Tech in the ACC, 44 being the total, and Bobby Dodd.
Made the joke on Twitter last week that I'd rather gouge my eyes out than watch Pittsburgh. They had the noon slate against Miami, and I was rightful in there. 16-12 they lose, and this is a Pat Narduzzi, who I still got to keep going back to the fact that he kicked a field goal from the 1-yard line down 7 against Penn State. Now, granted, they ran off 4 straight wins since then and then lost the Miami game, but can you trust Pittsburgh in this situation? Is there any sort of hangover? They've got a bye next week, so probably not so much a hangover. Georgia Tech's coming off their bye. They beat Miami 28-21 on the road. This is all part of the giant Coastal chaos here because everybody in the Coastal has a shot. I don't know. I can't trust Pitt. 6 drop passes last week. They found a running game last week, and Georgia Tech's got the last rush defense in the conference. You're right. I probably can't play anything here. This is probably one of those games that will not even be on my radar in terms of watching it on TV.
You brought up that Pittsburgh-Miami game, Matt. That was a rough one to watch, especially if you had Pittsburgh in pocket like I did. We got Nebraska at Purdue up next, Matt. Looks like... the Cornhuskers laying 3 on the road, 57 the total.
On Tuesday, Adrian Martinez says he'll be ready for this one. Now, granted, that's going to change as the practice goes along and as the coach gets involved and we see how many reps he has in practice. Clearly, it makes somewhat of a difference. They lost to Indiana 38-31 at home last week. Martinez is a way better quarterback than whatever they can put out there now. But then you've got Purdue. There's rumblings that Rondell Moore could be available. At least Nebraska's preparing like he could be available. He's the number 1 wide receiver. He's really good. Jack Plummer's going to be the quarterback for Purdue. I don't know how good he really is so far. Purdue has a -25 in the first quarter for their differential. Plus, get this stat. Them and Akron each have 1 run of 20 yards or more this season. Purdue's offense is not doing very much. Their defense has kind of shown up a little bit, so maybe this is a play on the under. You hope the black shirts come back. Purdue continues to struggle on offense, and they do just enough on defense to slow down maybe an offense led by Adrian Martinez.
He's mid-major Matt, and you can get his 3-day all-access at sportsmemo.com for only $29. That's less than $10 a day, sportsmemo.com. 3-day all-access with mid-major Matt. Coupon code MMM29. That's coupon code MMM29 at checkout. Heading to the AAC here, Matt. Houston at UCF in the bounce house with the Knights laying more than 3 touchdowns now, -22 pretty much across the board. High total here, 71 being the total.
I've enjoyed playing UCF first halves. This is a team that is just so much better than their opposition. It's almost like they get bored in the second half. Now, granted, they weren't bored last week. They continued to pour it on Temple. There's some injuries to watch out here. UCF, Adrian Killens is going to return to practice this week, but they're not sure if he's going to be available Saturday. Also, no update on the McCray kid, who is another offensive weapon for them. So that's 2 things to watch. You're basically having a Houston team that's still tanking for next season. Case in point, Mulbar Carr is the running back. He's got 1 more game, and they've basically said he's going to play 1 more game, red shirt to next year. Houston defensive tackle Blake Young missing the rest of the season. This is a defense that's not even that great as it is, and he's one of their better players. Patrick Carr expected to come back at running back as well as Kyle Porter, but they're also trying to manage some of these other guys. And we've seen Dana Holgorsen basically say, you play 4 games, that's it. You're done. Like, we're done for the season for you. We're playing for next year already. De'Ara King, I believe it was Corbin, the wide receiver, who also is doing that. I look at UCF in the first half here. They start fast against Houston. I'm looking to see. They don't really have a look ahead here at Tulsa on a Friday night, so they could be looking ahead. But UCF could start fast. Give me the Golden Knights in the first half in this one.
Matt, we got Michigan at Maryland up next, 56 being the total in College Park, minus 21. That's the Wolverines laying on the highway.
Well, Michigan announced their presence with authority last week, beating up on Notre Dame in a big high-profile game. They've got a bye week and then Michigan State. So, it's funny. If they would have had the Michigan State game next week, I might have considered Maryland here because of the sandwich spot. But I don't think with a bye week coming up, and plus I don't think this team can really take overlook anybody. Remember, they did go to Illinois, and that was a very tight game for a while before they pulled away for the 42-25 victory. I'm not ready to trust Michigan yet. I think that they exercised some demons with the victory on Saturday. On the Maryland side, the Pegram kid at quarterback is limited in practice. Josh Jackson took some first-team reps. If one of them can play and one of them can't play, the backup is a redshirt freshman, Tyler DeSue. I mean, Maryland is really broken ever since that Temple game. They've just won 1 game since then all the way back. I can't trust Maryland. I can't trust Michigan, so I'm going to pass in this one.
Staying in the Big Ten, we got Northwestern at Indiana. Hoosiers laying 12 at home, 45 the total in Bloomington.
Every time I see these Northwestern totals, I think, okay, they can't get any lower. Last week it was 37 in that game against Iowa, and it was 20-0 because Northwestern's offense is abysmal. And I was watching Pat Fitzgerald's press conference. It was either today or yesterday, and he sounded like a defeated man. Like, we've seen the quotes and the sound bites from him. There was the one a couple weeks ago that said, they asked him about all the Twitter criticism he's taking. He's like, I don't care. You can tell all those people, go away, basically. And he didn't need help with figuring out this offense. Aiden Smith, their quarterback, hasn't been very good. There's not a lot to like about this Northwestern team. On the Indiana side, is Michael Penix Jr. going to play? Peyton Ramsey was pretty good for them against Purdue. He actually leads all active FBS quarterbacks in completion percentage with 67%. Sophomore linebacker Thomas Allen, who is the coach's son, is having season-ending surgery. In theory, Indiana should roll in this one because I just don't believe Northwestern can put up any points. Maybe you want to look at the first half here, thinking that Indiana is going to run out to a big lead. Also, got to watch for weather. So as you start looking at these Midwestern games closer to Saturday, got to find out about rain, wind, snow, stuff like that. So as we start heading to November, you've got to handicap weather when it comes to this stuff as well, even if we are doing this earlier in the week.
Well said, Matt. And guys, you were listening to the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast here, presented by sportsmemo.com. I am Drew Martin, your host. He is Mid-Major Matt. This is section 1 of 3 sections this week. Sometimes we do 4, but it's a shorter card this week for whatever reason. More bye weeks is what comes to mind. And we got some action up next here, guys, but just want to remind you, you can watch on YouTube, also listen on the iTunes podcast app, and listen at sportsmemo.com. We got action here, Matt. Akron at Bowling Green. The Zips, 0-8 straight up, 0-8 against the number. If you've been fading Akron, you've been making some money. We got 50 being the total, -6 or -6.5, depending where you're shopping. That's the Bowling Green Falcons laying at home.
So Akron has not scored their last 2 games. They've scored 3 points the last 3 weeks since a bye week. They've scored less than 10 points 5 times this season. The stat I found here, passing accounts for nearly 80% of their total yards. They've rushed for just 447 yards total. That's right, 447 yards total. Now, it's wonky in college football because the sacks are included and everything, but that's a ridiculous number. They were some sort of stat that there's at least 100 players who have more rushing yards than Akron does as a team. We don't know if Cato Nelson's going to be under center. He was suspended for 2 games. The suspension in theory is over, but the Daniels kid that they used, the Gordon kid, they used in place of him wasn't terrible. Now, granted, they didn't score, but there were positives there. On the Bowling Green side, look, I'd really love for Akron to win this game. I've got Bowling Green at under 3.5 wins, and they're at 2 now because they stole the game against Toledo. Ever since that win against Toledo, they lost by 18 to Central Michigan. They lost by 39 to Western Michigan. The Grant Loy kid who comes over from Boston College, he's a really mobile quarterback, but he doesn't really throw it very well. This defense doesn't stop anybody very well. It's a game you probably won't watch. Both defenses are pretty bad, but both offenses aren't very good. So if you think that the offenses continue to stink, the under is a gift here. But if you think the defenses are going to continue to be Swiss cheese, then yeah, you're probably looking at the over.
Great breakdown, Matt. We got Big Ten action next. Rutgers at Illinois. Looks like the Illini 20.5 home favorites here. 49 the total in Champaign.
Boy, a couple of weeks ago, this game would have been absolutely hideous. Now, it's going to be hideous anyway because it's Rutgers and Illinois, and you're probably not watching it. But at least Illinois has beaten Wisconsin. I thought that Illinois was going to kind of be a one-hit wonder afterwards, and they were going to fall on their face, but they won the game afterwards. We don't know about Ricky Smalling. He's one of their better offensive weapons. He's missed the last 2 games. Maybe he comes back. Of course, they clearly didn't need him because they beat Wisconsin and Purdue. Lovie Smith's beard is getting closer to Sander level, so that's also a reason to watch potentially. On the Rutgers side, look, they beat Liberty. They looked really good offensively, but I'm not ready to buy into Rutgers all of a sudden, the offensive juggernaut. Also here is the interesting thing. Will they play Cole Snyder? They've got 4 games left in the season. He's the heralded freshman quarterback on the team that they're really trying to preserve his red shirt. Johnny Langan played really well against Liberty. Before then, he threw for less than 50 yards over a 2-week span. Cole Snyder is a heralded freshman. I have a feeling we take a look at him in this game, and maybe that makes Rutgers interesting, but please stay away from this game. You do not have to bet it.
Mid-major, Matt, we got Cincinnati at ECU up next, 48 being the total with the Bearcats laying 23 on the road.
Unfortunately, last week I was on ECU against USF. ECU did not play very well. And look, the USF is a terrible football team, but ECU probably is worse. As I've said last week, because I had this game last week on our podcast, I like Mike Houston as the hire. I think he's going to do good things there once he gets his style, once he gets his guys in there. They did have a huge loss on defense. Redshirt junior linebacker Aaron Ramsey torn his ACL. 32 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. That's a big loss to a defense that's already been pretty bad. They've given up 40 points to each of their last 2 opponents. Cincinnati here, it's a broken record. I don't like laying that many points, but they're just that much better than ECU. They have UConn coming up. It's homecoming, so there's no real look ahead. I can't fault you if you take Cincinnati on this one. They're just that much better, but I won't lay that many points on the road.
Next game up involving your alma mater here, Matt. Syracuse at home against Boston College. The Orange laying 3 or 3.5, 60 the total.
Oh, gosh. Where do I start? Syracuse is terrible. The only thing they've done for me so far this year was they hit the under last week against Florida State. That was important because I had the under. Their offense is just broken right now. The offensive line can't block anybody. It goes all the way back to week 1 when their center, Sam Heckel, got hurt. He's the guy who anchored everything because he got hurt. They had to move a bunch of guys around. Tommy DeVito has happy feet in the pocket. You want to talk about seeing ghosts. Tommy DeVito, I feel like at times is seeing ghosts there. They don't have their defensive tackle, McKinley Williams. He has not played yet this year. The good news is they got a couple guys back in the secondary, Andre Cisco and Afeni Melawatu. But do I really want to trust them at all? They look like a dead team walking right now. I watched that game against Florida State. There was no juice. There was no energy. Dino Babers looked a bit defeated. Unless he starts pulling some things out of his hat, I don't know how they're going to score. Even against a Boston College team that just gave up 59 points to Clemson, 41 to Louisville. I mean, it's an ugly game. I'd like to think Syracuse will show up at home, but then again, I thought so a couple weeks ago against Pittsburgh, and they didn't do it. So this is another one of those stay-away games because I don't really like either team.
Heading to back to the action here, Matt. We got Buffalo at Eastern Michigan. EMU laying 1.5 or 2 at home. 50 being the total on the gray turf.
Yeah, the gray turf. Like I feel like that's not even a proper. It's like even worse than a gray turf. It's like if you had your TV and it wasn't calibrated right, and you watch that field, you'd be like, "What's going on?" But really, like it's a terrible gimmick for an Eastern Michigan team to have on the field. This is a hard team to figure out, Eastern Michigan. Mike Glass is under center. He was back at last week after he missed the contest. Preston Hutchinson was pretty good at quarterback. But I don't know what to expect from Eastern Michigan. They don't have a ton of great home field advantage here. You look at their home results. They did not cover against Central Connecticut State, a game I had back in September. They lost outright to Ball State, but then they bounced back and beat Western Michigan by a touchdown. And then last week they lose by overtime. the only thing I can think of is you're going to get a close game here because they just don't have the weapons to pull away and they don't have the defense to pull away. Buffalo, they've started to right the ship a little bit. They've won their last two. They won at Akron. They beat Central Michigan. They have a win already at home against Temple. But then they've got the loss against Miami, Ohio on the road where they look lethargic. They look lethargic at Liberty this year. This is probably another no play here, but Buffalo wants to beat you with the run with Marks and Patterson. Their defense is decent. Maybe you look at the under and you hope the malaise continues with Eastern Michigan. But much like their field, this is probably not going to be on my card.
Matt, we got ACC action up next, and the Virginia Cavaliers catching 2.5 against North Carolina. UNC at home in Chapel Hill, 47.5 the total here, Matt.
So I guess I have to point. There's the UVA logo that's right behind me. So here's my assessment of UVA. Last week, I liked the spot for Louisville. The UVA coming off the home win over Duke where they thought all is right, and then they got the other coastal game against North Carolina on the road. So I like the spot with Louisville last week. I think I like the spot a little bit with UVA here. Bryce Perkins is taking a beating. That's the big question. Last week he goes down. He's going to be available for this game. He's going to play, but the offensive line is just terrible for UVA right now. They're not blocking anybody. The offense is very uncreative. You know, talking to some of the UVA beat reporters, they were stunned that this team was only able to score, 21 points against a bad Louisville team. That's a big-time concern when you have Hassis Dubois and Joe Reed. The defense has been fine. They were a little sloppy at times, but they're starting to get over the fact that they don't have Bryce Hall for the rest of the season. Their linebacking core has more sacks than a ton of teams in the FBS. On the other side, you've got a UNC team, which if you flip a couple plays here and there, their record could be completely different. I still don't know what the heck Deion Jackson was doing on the 2-yard line, throwing that pass into the belly of a UNC player. Like, that made no sense for David Cutcliffe, who I think is a genius in this game. North Carolina's got the young quarterback, Howell. They've got a decent defense. They've shown up at times. Of course, they gave up a bunch of points to Virginia Tech. I actually like this spot for Virginia. I think they're the better team than North Carolina, and that's not just me saying it because I've got the under on the North Carolina season win total and can't afford them to keep winning because they've got a Mercer game coming up. I think UVA is worth a look here. I'm going to wait and see if I can catch the 3, maybe a little bit extra love there from the odds makers, but I like UVA a little bit in this spot right now.
Good stuff, Matt. We got one game left for this section, guys, and then we'll bring in Joe Ranieri for the next 15 or so games. BYU, Utah State coming up. And remember the coupon code, 3-day all access with Mid-Major Matt. Coupon code MMM29. No spaces in there at sportsmemo.com. That's 3-day all access with Mid-Major Matt. Coupon code MMM29 for less than $30. You get his 3-day all access, less than $10 a day. MMM29 at checkout. Last game here, Matt. BYU at Utah State, 50.5 being the total. Utah State, the Aggies, laying 3 in the hook in Logan.
By the way, one thing on the promo, if you time it out right, you can get college basketball in there. So, like, let's say you buy it on a Sunday, you get Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday is the start of the college basketball season. I've been doing my work on college basketball, so the 3-day package is nice. You could do the Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You could do the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So college basketball is coming. That's another one of sports I love to talk about and handicap. So when it comes to BYU, we've talked about their schedule all year long. This is a BYU team that's not afraid of anybody. And finally, they get a bye week. You know, they got a bye back in October. But with all the tough games that they've played, I feel like they needed this second quick bye because they're coming off of the Boise State game. They played at USF. At times, they seemed like a tired football team. Now they're going to be refreshed down the stretch. Listen to this. They play at Utah State, Liberty, Idaho State, at UMass, and at San Diego State. I mean, that's about as much coasting as you could possibly do. Utah State coming off the loss against Air Force where they were just out physical. Air Force was the tougher team. They were the better team on the field. Jordan Love is struggling right now at quarterback. Like, I don't understand what it is. He doesn't have a ton of help from his weapons, but until he starts to figure some things out, I kind of lean to BYU. Don't love it here, but I don't like what I'm seeing from Utah State, a team that was supposed to go as Jordan Love goes. And if he's not throwing the ball well and if he's not playing well, then this team's not going to go very far.
Mid-Major Matt, great stuff as always, man. Anything you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
No, just as I said, college basketball is coming up on Tuesday. We like to dip our toes in the water early on with a couple of games on the first night. There's always some interesting things, looking at returning starters, looking at new coaches, new coaching styles. There's even the early look aheads when college basketball teams have some bigger games on tap and some, lesser teams to start. So really excited for college basketball, and hopefully you enjoy the information. And the only other thing I'll say is a lot of people ask, where do I get my injury information? I do a lot of Googling. I read a lot of press conferences, and since this is early, just, keep up with me on Twitter at MidMajorMatt. I'll post some injury updates on there. And certainly as we get towards Saturday, because as I said, I may not have a pick, but I'll be more than willing to give you whatever information that I have to give you.
Great stuff, Matt. And follow him on Twitter at MidMajorMatt or myself at Drew Martin Betts. Guys, we will be right back with Joe Ranieri breaking down the next set of games. College football, every game on the board podcast.